What's going on, guys? Welcome to the first episode of Around the Natty. I am one of your co-hosts here. My name is Logan.
And I'm Andrew.
And we're just here to talk about little sports in the Natty. So on today's episode, we kind of have, we're hitting a little bit of everything today. Talking a little Bengals, talking a little Reds, a little Bearcats, football and basketball. A lot of things to cover. So let's get right into it, Andrew. What are we going to be talking about today?
So, starting off, we are going to be talking about the Bengals season. We'll be starting off with the Bengals and kind of our takeaways from the season, what we liked, what was good, what was bad, and then kind of give you our expectations going forward, what we would like to see happen, what we expect to happen, and things like that. So, if you want to go ahead and start us off, we can go ahead and do that.
Yeah, so I think that the best place to start, I think, is the good, the bad, and the ugly. So this is a segment where we'll kind of each go through. We'll talk about what we thought was good in the season, what was bad, what was ugly. So let's start off with me. For me, honestly, I think the good was that we established a run game. Joe Mixon actually led the AFC in rushing, which I think that was really huge for me. Regrettably, throughout the season, I think there was definitely times where, play calling was questionable. I know a lot of times on social media would see a lot of cries for Giovanni Bernard to not be on the bench as much, But yeah, no, that's my good for the season. What about you, Andrew?
So my good, my major one was Tyler Boyd. As a guy who saw very minimal production, was more of an afterthought behind AJ Green. I think he took a huge step this year. He's pretty much in 1 year matched his total prior in receptions, as in yards. He had 1,028 yards and 7 touchdowns, and was really our primary receiver with all the injuries that we saw with AJ and pretty much the rest of the team. He kind of took over that lead role, and that did hurt us, but I think he stepped in and filled that role as best as he can. Obviously, going into the season next year, we hope to have better health, better luck, and see him more in the slot rather than on the outside, and get him some good matchups going forward. But that's what I had for the good. You want to go ahead with the bad?
Yeah, and so for me, I think the bad, it has to be the defense, right? And I think it's one of those things where we came in, we had some optimism with a new coach. I know you and I had disagreed previously about Terrell Austin, and I was pretty skeptical going into it, just because his defenses in Detroit the last few years have been 25th, 32nd. But he came in, and this is a new league essentially. Offense is prime. The way defense win is that nowadays is rush the passer effectively and force turnovers, and that's what he was supposed to be able to do and bring to the team. I think that you made big steps in the offseason and re-signing Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap, your best
Right.
two pass rushers, and you expected them to have a better season than they did. And I think that's a question moving forward: is what does that look like? But I think that obviously you can pinpoint different parts of the defense that were bad. But I think you have to say the defense overall was just pretty disappointing, especially in previous years, is where it's led the team essentially.
Absolutely, and especially when you have two guys, one interior, one on the edge with Carlos and Geno, it almost looked like they had forgot how to rush the passer. And Geno being a future first ballot Hall of Famer, Carlos is a guy who's consistently up there with 10, 12 sacks, what have you. It was really odd to see them not get to the quarterback as much, not wreak as much havoc as they usually do. And I think a lot of that has to do with our secondary. It also has to do a lot with schemes. And then obviously a couple times during the season we saw Geno dropping a pass coverage. So there's a bunch of things that contribute there. Obviously, I do not think they've forgotten how to pass rush. But for me, what I put as our bad, even though they were a much improved group from a year ago, I put our offensive line. Like I said, we did see some improvement. And again, we saw Joe finally start to become the running back that we knew he could be, both out of the backfield and, rushing the ball, being the leading AFC rusher and things like that. But we still have some holes. In my opinion, Bobby Hart is not the long-term solution. That I don't think anybody expected him to be. Billy Price underperformed.
Oh, absolutely.
Pro Football Focus has him ranked as one of the lowest grading rookies on the season. And then obviously with the injuries and things like that. But, despite improving, I still think they're the weakest part of our offense. They're young. We'll see what we can do with the draft here. But again, I think that was our worst part. I think that's the bad I have is, just the lack of discipline was the biggest thing that stood out to me. In so many crucial situations, we had a false start. I think we led the league in false starts. And it wasn't even that we led the league in them. It was just, it'd be a 4th and 1 on the goal line or, going for it on 4th. And, we really needed to, kind of get back in the game or something like that. And always seemed like somebody was jumping off sides or doing something they shouldn't have done. So that was my bad. So what did you have for ugly?
I was really tempted actually to put the called down on 3rd down and goal line against the Chargers, where apparently when you're diving for the end zone, you can still be giving yourself up when trying to score. But my ugly for the season is actually the injuries. I think that this is a team. This is a team that started 4-0, and you can say what you want about coaching. You can say what you want about individual performance and the talent of the team, and perhaps all of those things might be true. In terms of where we lack. But I think it's irresponsible to say that injuries didn't play a role. I mean,
absolutely.
For the most part, we had I don't think ever had all 3 of our designed starting linebackers to play a game together through all 4 quarters.
Whether that be Vigil, Perfect,
right,
and Preston,
right, and obviously Tyler Eifert, losing him, and then right after losing Tyler Croft, you're essentially playing with your 3rd string tight end there,
right,
and then you're signing guys off the street. Additionally, I mean, you lose AJ Green, who is your best player. I mean, that's your star. You ride or die with AJ Green.
Yeah. And
then you lose your quarterback, and you had just lost your backup, who in 2015 came in and played well, and AJ McCarron. Yeah. So I think that for me, it has to be the injuries, and I think that not to say that it would have been a playoff team or a contender by any stretch of the imagination, but I definitely think the team looks very different. If we at least have Andy Dalton or some of our playmakers,
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the injuries hurt every team. I think it's very rare to see as many starters as we had go down pretty much all season. And what that makes me think, what is their training regiment looking like? Is it just, obviously Tyler Eifert's is kind of a freak accident.
Right. And you saw another one just last weekend in the Dallas-Seattle game.
Yeah, with Hearns.
With Hearns, yeah.
Yeah, but what are they doing in the gym? Are they doing the right workouts that they need to be doing? Because when I'm looking at it, a lot of them are dinks and dunks, and obviously with Vontaze, a lot of his were head related, as we've seen in the past.
And he just looked slow. He looked old.
Yeah, he wasn't playing the same regardless of if he was on the field. But maybe they weren't doing what they need. I hate to question whether they're getting what they need to get done in the off season.
Yeah.
But after a season like that, you have to look at it and go, that's either really bad luck or somebody's not preparing well.
Right. Yeah. And I think that Vontaze missing the first 4 games of the season definitely hurts him as well.
Absolutely.
And there's being in shape and there's being in football shape. And I remember going into the season. I know in seasons past, Vontaze has been overweight and things like that. But based on the beat reporters that were coming out, and James Rapine, who was previously with ESPN 1530, and Tony Pike, who covered spring training camp, training camp rather. Jumping ahead of the Red season. But they said Vontaze looked good. He looked healthy coming in, even though he wasn't able to fully participate in all of the preseason activities and things like that. And then obviously missing the first 4 games, but I don't know. Maybe it's time, and I would argue and assert that it's time to move on from Vontaze.
With the new coaching staff coming in, whoever that may be, we'll talk about that in a bit. I find it hard to believe that they'll retain him. When he was playing at a really high level, and it was almost easy to look past the injuries and the antics and things like that, but he hasn't been the same. Whether it's he's been off the field for certain amounts of time and he gets out of shape, or that injury with Juju Smith-Schuster really seemed to dampen his abilities and things like that. And I think the football sense is still there. I just think he look like you said, he looks slow. He's not reading the plays as well. He doesn't look to be flowing.
Yeah, he looks. I mean, and it's not just physically like he's lacking speed. He looks like he's playing the game slowly. It doesn't look like he's he's always been an instinctive player. He's been able to break on the ball really well and make big plays as a result. And it just doesn't look like. I don't know if it's something if it was scheme or what that was. But it certainly looked like at times he was playing with bricks on his feet and reading the play just as slowly. So
right, absolutely, and that kind of leads me to my ugly. What I had as the ugly was the linebacking core. I think that was by far the weakest point of our defense. I think teams feasted on our linebackers all game without any resistance whatsoever. I think both in the run and in the pass, there was no gap discipline. Nobody was filling the run lanes. There was no, good angles on pursuit, anything like that. And then, like I said, the middle of the field was wide open all year. As a fan myself, it was very frustrating to just watch a tight end gallop up into the middle of the field for 10, 12 yards every time. Or, one of the things the Bengals did poorly, one of the many things the Bengals did poorly was third down. Again, the middle of the field is wide open, and that's a good matchup that people would like to exploit. And to me, I think that was probably our worst, the worst part of the season for me was watch just the helplessness of the linebackers in the middle of the field.
And I say moving forward, though, I think at the end of the season we saw, moments, different plays. I mean, even at times full games where the defense showed potential. I mean, that San Diego Chargers game, that's no easy offense to shut down. And I think that we put that they kept us in the game. Right. Our defense did, and at a time when Jay Drizzy or Jeff Driscoll wasn't able to put anything on the board for us. The defense really thought it kept us in that game. Credit to Marvin Lewis and his staff and turning it around to some extent. And I think that to a certain extent it was a lack of talent, and as you mentioned, the linebacking core specifically, and the injuries combined, are adding to that. But one thing I do want to mention, and you said going forward, we talked about Vontaze Burfict's future. I think that from one perspective, Marvin Lewis didn't get enough credit in that. I think he managed personalities in that locker room so well for years, whether that was Chad Johnson or Chris Henry or other athletes, a Pac-Man Jones, a Vontaze Burfict. And I think that's one thing that Bengals fans never really appreciated, and I think they're going to miss moving forward. So to your point, like I said, I think that's going to be a thing that will be key to look at going forward.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree. But I think overall there's some things that we can take away from
for sure.
From the year. Obviously, a third season out of the playoffs after a 5-year stretch. So there's definitely some improvement that can be made, and we can take away what we did well and what they did well and what they can do better going forwards. But with that, I think it's time we can go ahead and talk about our new coaching prospects.
But rather apropos, absolutely.
But with that, announced today, January 10th, they kind of announced who they kind of want. It is Zach Taylor for the Rams.
Yeah.
And I know, there's some mixed feelings on here. It does kind of go with that young offensive mind that the NFL seems to be leaning towards.
Right.
So I'll kind of let you take the lead on that.
Let's kind of dive into Zach Taylor and let's give a profile for anyone who's listening, kind of to give you an idea. Zach Taylor is currently the quarterback coach for the LA Rams under Sean McVay. He's 35 years old and was by far the youngest candidate of the candidates the Bengals had interviewed for the position. Previously He's only been a play caller twice in his whole career, and once was at the University of Cincinnati, and the other time was in Miami with the Dolphins, and he only did it for 5 games. So that's something that I think we should be made note of moving forward and looking forward into that. But aside from that, I mean, he's worked as a quarterback coach for many years. Worked with offenses, been under different offense mind. I mean, Philbin is considered to be a really big or a great offensive mind. He's worked with developing quarterbacks and Ryan Tannehill in Miami. Regrettably, he got stuck with working with Gunnar Kiel at the University of Cincinnati. But I think that this is something that was a decision made based on fan response, and then also I think that this might indicate that the Bengals are looking ahead at the future of the quarterback position and saying, we have a young guy, and I think they're going to try to give Andy a chance to, and I think he deserves a chance to show what he can do in a different system with a different guy, different message. But also, I think it might be the beginning of him moving forward, and the Brown family and the organization saying that we're ready to go on and draft the next quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with that. One thing people have been saying, seats require changes. Towards the end of the season, you saw the stadium. The stadium was empty. Everybody was, ready for some change. Obviously, 3 years not in the playoffs is not a great thing.
Right.
One thing I like about it is he has had some time under McVay, who is from kind of that offensive mind. I think, I think it'll add a new energy to the locker room as well. Mm-hmm. Marv's been there a long time. 16 years is a long time.
I mean, I can't remember watching another head coach. Right. We're 22, 22, 21, and I can't remember watching a Bengals game where Marvin Lewis wasn't the head football coach.
Absolutely, yeah. So, it's been a long time since this program's seen, some refreshing stuff like this. Obviously, with the whole Marvin Lewis coaching tree and getting their opportunities elsewhere, we've gotten some kind of tweaks and changes here, but I don't think we've ever, in a long time seen an overhaul quite like this.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited for that, especially coming out of a really, flipped around program such as the Rams, who went from one of the basement teams to, a legit team this year, and as of last year too, making the playoffs 2 years in a row. So, a lot of people are concerned, obviously with the Bearcats, he didn't do, they didn't do quite what they wanted to do down there. But I don't think that deters me. That program was doing pretty poorly before. I think Tuberville was kind of on his way out, and he kind of knew he was on his way out. Yeah. As far as recruiting, he wasn't recruiting around the area, getting the town around here, and I think he just knew it was time. Especially by the way he left. But I'm excited. He's led some really good receivers, some good quarterbacks. I think he's going to be crucial for the development of, or the advancement of Andy Dalton well into the advancement of maybe a future quarterback that we draft. Right. We got some good quarterback classes coming up here soon. So I'm excited. I think a fresh, younger coach. Marvin was pushing 60, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was getting up there, and I think that I think it's a good thing, but also I think that brings about some of my concerns with the hire itself, and again, it's something official. We could have a Josh McDaniels situation on our hands here.
That's true.
Where
true.
So nothing's official yet until they're out of the playoffs and they make the official announcement. So we'll see what happens there. But I think it does pose the question. Will a 35-year-old be able to come in and manage a locker room with a lot of big personalities?
Right.
I mean, you have, in my opinion, a potential Hall of Famer in AJ Green there. That's a big voice. Joe Mixon has been shown to be a rather bombastic character on the sideline, which I love. I love the passion, but he is still passionate nonetheless, and will obviously be a big voice and a big personality he's going to have to manage. And hopefully, he's picked up some tricks from Sean McVay. I think Sean McVay has done a good job of doing that in LA. Additionally, I mentioned before, he's only called plays a couple of times, and really we have a very small sample size. And I think that it's a huge testament to the organization and overall change that we were able to move from a point of, we've always been an organization we go with what's known. We've never gone with outside of a known commodity.
Right.
When Marvin Lewis was hired, even that was the consensus. Everyone wanted Marvin. Led that great Ravens defense to a Super Bowl. And here, we have a 35-year-old who's never even had a full season as offense coordinator in the league. Who's now going to be our head coach. So I think that's going to be something that's interesting. But I did do some research, actually. And according to CincyJungle.com, they actually took a poll from readers on there. And they asked, how do you feel about the Zach Taylor hire? And the answers or the choices were either yes, I'm in favor of it, no, I wanted a different candidate, or anyone but Hugh. And interestingly enough, 55% said that yes, they would or they are okay with the Zach Taylor hire. 19% said no, and 26% said anyone but Hugh. And I was with the 26% myself.
Well, opposed to what you just said, obviously, like you said, we could have a McDaniel situation. 2, we don't know what his coordinators are going to be.
Yeah, staff's a big issue.
Yeah, there's still a lot of good candidates out there, regardless of if the Buccaneers OC, what's this, Monken?
Yeah.
I think he could be a great candidate for OC. There's a lot of really good DC hires out there as well.
So you mentioned Taylor's brother as a potential candidate as well.
Yeah, over there with the Eagles, I think that's going to be crucial.
Mm-hmm.
At least just in the beginning stages, because you can have a really good head coach who can lead a team, or like an Andy Reid, he can lead a team. He kind of takes on a little bit more responsibility than most, or you can have a coach that's more hands off, and kind of does that. But with a young coach, you kind of want him to manage the game and get a feel for managing the game. So I think an OC and a DC are going to be really crucial for us. Going forward, just till he can get his feet wet as a head coach.
Well, and I think maybe even a smart hire would be an associate head coach as well, someone that's had experience. One person that I don't think anyone's talking about, but I kind of thought would be interesting is Brad Childress. Actually, just resigned from his job in the AAF, which is some other football league. He was the head coach there, and this is their inaugural season, so they're just about to start, and he resigned right before the season started here. So I think that's kind of interesting, and that's another person. He was an offensive mind in Minnesota for many years. He was coach of a lot of good teams.
Right.
If you remember correctly, that was with that was the Brett Favre, Adrian Peterson teams, and I think that not necessarily I wanted to call the plays, but just that's a good experience to lean on, and that's a guy sitting on his couch, and so why not reach out and give him a call?
Yeah, and obviously Zach Taylor comes from a long line of offensive minds, so I think he's more than qualified. But again, as far as his qualifications, he is pretty scarce in his experience. Mm-hmm. Being a quarterback's coach, things like that, and then jumping straight to head coach, there is some cause for concern there. However, like I said, I think this is the Brown family saying we got to go different.
And we're listening.
Yeah. A lot of the times, you don't hear from Mike Brown.
Right. Even in Marvin Lewis's last press conference, I would think that if it was as amicable as they say, and I believe that it was, why wasn't Mike Brown there?
Right.
That's been your guy for the last 16 years, Mike. Come on.
Yeah. So he's a pretty reserved guy, but it is definitely nice to hear, that they're listening. They want to make some change, and it looks like they want to win. Now, obviously, it is a little bit different than most franchises. It's a little bit more old school without the traditional GM and stuff like that. But this is definitely a step in the right direction, and I'm really excited. Like we said, this isn't definite, but I have seen quite a bit of sources saying it's looking like Taylor to the Bengals.
Yeah, absolutely, and. I think that talking about change, I think that brings up my next point. And this might be a bold statement, but I say we lose 16 games in 2020. We go get Trevor Lawrence. It looked pretty good on Monday night and against the the tide out there.
Well, let's give him a couple more years. Obviously, as a Bengals fan, we don't want anybody to tank or anything like that. But he is quite a quarterback.
Honestly, I don't know. I tank for Trevor Lawrence. I accept it. I allow
freshman. He is a generational talent. We'll see how he fills out. What you say? 2 more years he's back.
Yeah, he's got 2 more years that he has to play before he can be eligible. So. And how about Kyler Murray coming out and saying he's declaring for the draft, the NFL draft? Did you see that?
I did not see that.
Yeah, so Kyler Murray just declared for the NFL draft as well, and he has the potential to be the first ever player to be drafted both in the MLB and NFL first rounds, which is interesting. Everyone else likes Bo Jack. They all were second round MLB players, but first round NFL players. So that's pretty interesting.
Well, you got to look at it this way. The trend has always been multi-sport athletes are usually the most successful athletes, and that's one of the biggest misconceptions as well. I think he's more than qualified to be a quarterback in the NFL. He's a little on the shorter side. Mm-hmm. I think he's only 5'10", big arm. I think he's smart enough to get it done. To be honest, if I were him, if you're going to be a first rounder in baseball, there's bigger contracts and longer careers over there.
Yeah, but one thing that people were talking about is, Tim Tebow went and did the football thing, realized it really wasn't one for him, and he was not nearly the baseball talent that. He hadn't played since high school, and look at him, he's about to be AAA this year, playing in the Mets, Mets affiliation, AAA affiliate, whatever that is. I don't know off the top of my head, but and a lot of that I think is more to sell tickets. I understand that, but Kyler Murray is supposed to be also a great talent in baseball. Enough to be a first rounder, obviously. Right. And so I really think that he could go in the NFL, get the big first round money, and if it doesn't work out, I think he goes back to baseball. And
I think that's fair as well. Now, there is some risk involved with that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that we go and get. First of all, I think that he's gonna be the first quarterback at the board. I think he's gonna go ahead of Dwayne Haskins. And so I don't think that we as the Bengals even have a chance to get him at 9. But
you think so?
Oh, absolutely. I think he's the first quarterback off the board.
Based on what? Just him being a Heisman?
Well, I think the only reason that he hasn't been talked about thus far is because he wasn't going to declare for the draft originally.
I don't know if he's got a better arm than Haskins. I think Haskins is a more pro-ready quarterback. And I don't think that the scare is off the board as far as him wanting to play football.
Yeah, I also say that's one thing for me is I would I could totally see the Bengals, if they were to draft Kyler Murray somehow, if they were to fall to us, drafting Kyler Murray and then being like, this isn't really for me, and then going to baseball. That would be such a Bengals situation. Yeah, that's the life of a Cincinnati fan.
We drafted Achilles Smith over Drew Brees, so
does not just hurt.
But yeah, I don't think we're gonna have a chance to draft either of those guys. Yeah. Now, I did see something on Twitter. Arizona was talking about drafting him after drafting Rosen.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That's not a good show of faith. As far as they could always draft him and trade Rosen for a decent pick.
Yeah, well, I think that the reason why they went out and got is it Kingsbury? Is that the the reason why they went out and got Kingsbury was to help grow and facilitate the growth of Rosen. I think that they, fair or not, I think they attribute a lot of the success of Baker and then also Patrick Mahomes to Kingsbury and his play calling. So perhaps that's what they wanted to do, and we'll see. I think that they've got a lot of cap space, a lot of room to do a lot in the offseason. But they need the pieces. Larry Fitzgerald can't be your best receiver.
Let's be real. The Arizona Cardinals are not in great shape.
No way.
Both sides of the ball. There's gaps everywhere. Their offensive line's horrible. Their defense is not very good. I can't name a receiver after Larry Fitzgerald.
They shipped Brown off to Baltimore, so that's the only one I would know off the top of my head myself.
So definitely, I think that's cool. That he would consider going to the draft. It would be weird to have a Heisman Trophy winner not in the draft,
right?
Even though he's eligible.
Yeah.
But we'll see as time goes on. I'm sure he hasn't made his final decision
I'll
yet.
say as we near April, I'm sure all the talks will heat up, and I'm sure we'll probably do a full episode on just draft talk. I'm sure at some point.
I'm about that, yeah.
So, but just like we don't think that athletes should specialize early on, and we don't want to become one dimensional ourselves on our show. So let's kind of jump ship here for a minute and move on from football. Let's talk a little Reds baseball.
Absolutely. So. Like we said, we're just going to talk a little baseball here. I think we're going to start off with the big trade.
Yeah, how can we not, right?
Yeah.
I think that after having a full, long, hard Bengals season of staleness, I think it was exciting as a Cincinnati fan to see someone go out there and make a move, and the credit to Grohl and Dick Williams and the front office there, and going out making a trade. And I talked about this a little bit off air. I feel like it was quite the steal. I mean, you move a dead contract in Homer Bailey for 3 former All-Stars. I obviously give up some prospects in that trade, but you also get back cash considerations. And you can even potentially turn around and use one or multiple of those players as another trade piece moving forward. Now, I think Yasiel Puig stays, but I think that the other two on the table could potentially be used, especially Matt Kemp, in a future trade to really shore up the front end of our starting rotation.
Well, I definitely believe that, the one thing overall that the Reds need is they need starting arms. And with this trade, they get a really good arm in Alex Wood. I think he can be a really great addition to our rotation. And honestly, I don't think we're done.
Right.
Obviously, like you said, in the future, they're going to use some of these players for future trades or things like that. And I think we go after another arm, whether that's Keuchel or Kluber or one of these elite arms that I think will set us over the top, because I think the offense is there.
Yeah.
You got Suarez, you got Jeanette, you got one of the best hitters of this generation.
Right.
In Joey Votto. So I think the pieces are falling in line. I think we're just missing some arms here.
Yeah, I think the offense, to your point, like I said, the lineup definitely has a lot of potential. And I think that, David Bell and his staff have, great potential in moving forward. And I think, according to the people I've heard talk, and people that are a lot closer to the situation than I am, I've said, the reason why these Dodgers players are so excited, one, they played 82 games in Great American Ballpark, or this year 80, because they're giving up 2 home games to go play in Mexico, or 79, I guess. Sorry, but also because David Bell's here, and that was the hitting coach in LA before, and I think even if it doesn't prove to be frugal or beneficial to us, it does feel good to go out and take the pitching coach from Milwaukee as well. I don't know, just going out there and stealing it from a division rival is always a little bit more pleasurable.
Yeah, no, I think Reds ownership has definitely been aggressive here this offseason. In Cincinnati, it's despite of regardless of what FC Cincinnati's done, which is great and things like that. The big franchises such as the Bengals and the Reds have been kind of stale lately.
Oh, absolutely.
You can tell the city's getting restless, and I think that's why we're seeing a lot of these big moves that we don't normally see here. Being middle market clubs. So I think it's really nice and to go out there and assemble a really good coaching staff.
Yeah. And
then also assemble, get some good players in there. It's not like we're going up there with the same lineup every time. I think they're adding some good arms. They added Rourke.
Yeah.
I think he's a right-handed pitcher, and we got Wood as well. So they're looking to improve every year, and I think they're doing it in a great way. That trade is an absolute steal.
Right. Well, and hey, I think we can. We got all these new toys to play with and talk about, but I think that it's easy to forget. Luis Castillo and Tyler Mahle, they've shown moments of looking like they could be all-stars. In the future, they've both had stretches where they looked amazing. Obviously, Tyler Mahle at the beginning of the season, the first quarter, third of the season, just looked unhittable almost, and and then after that, he kind of tailed off and struggled quite a bit. But I think it was almost a reverse cycle for Luis Castillo as the season went on. He looked stronger and stronger,
Right.
and I think we can find a way to focus in and continue to develop those young guys and allow them to kind of move into their role. I mean, there's some place in that rotation, whether that's the starting rotation or in the bullpen even, for those guys, you know. And I think moving forward, that's something to be excited about as a Reds fan, and you know, I think that there's a lot of reason for optimism this
Absolutely.
season, you know, and I think that even now, I think and we'll kind of go and talk about our predictions here in a minute, but I think it would be irresponsible to expect to compete for a championship this year, especially with the current roster as it's constructed. But you know, I think that there's no reason to believe that we shouldn't be improving from 67 wins last year, you know.
Absolutely. And we're talking about starting arms. We have a really good bullpen. In my opinion, with Amir Garrett, who was a stud early on and then struggled a little bit later.
Sure.
Iglesias, who's always really good.
Mm-hmm.
We locked him down on a nice big contract to keep him in Cincinnati for a little bit longer. That's really nice. One of the best closers in the game.
Right.
And then we got Michael Lorenzen, who's an absolute animal. Slashing home runs and striking people out. So we got some really good young arms in our bullpen as well, which I think is really nice.
Right.
To have on the back end.
Right, and I mean, talk about young arms. And Sal Romano, that's a guy that was used in multiple different ways last year. I mean, he came out of the bullpen. He would start games, and there's times where he looked really good. Regrettably, sometimes where he looked pretty bad. But I think that's something to build on. He's still very young, and that's something that we can definitely look forward to in the future. But so let's talk about predictions. So according to MLB. .com, the Reds are this year projected to win 78 games. That is an 11-game improvement from last year. Let's do our way too early predictions on what do you think the Reds' record will be next season?
I'm going to go ahead and let you take this one.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go?
Yeah.
So...
I'm going to base mine off here.
So...
I can be more accurate and I can look back on it.
So I'm going to go ahead and say... I think that we win 76 games, so just under the projected MLB.com report. I think that we show improvement, but I still think that there's a lot to do in that starting rotation. I don't think that 1 year you just usually don't see a team go from 60 games to 90 in 1 year. That's just not very common. I think that we're interesting. I think that leading into the All-Star break, or even competitive in the division itself, but I think eventually the starting rotation catches up with us, and I think we improve, but still have some ways to go. So I'm going to say 76 games.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to go the opposite way. I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to go 80 games.
All right.
Right? I think we add one more arm
to
the starting rotation, a stud, like a Kluber or a Keuchel or, what have you. I think our young guys developed a little bit. Castillo's throwing flame balls down the plate. I think Malley's picking around, getting a bunch of strikeouts, things like that. And I think we see Suarez develop. I think we see Senzel come up this year, who's a great prospect that we have coming off of surgery. I see Winker doing well, things like that, and I think we see a lot of improvement. I think 80 games is not a realm of possibility.
No, sure.
And I think
especially if you add that extra arm in the rotation, I think
right.
That definitely would change my answer for sure.
I think the whole thing is weighed on the pitching, the starting pitching. Obviously, we don't know if we're going to add that extra arm that we so desperately need. We also don't know. How this new pitching coach and how these young guys are going to develop,
right?
Between this season and the start of next season. But as a blind Cincinnati fan, I say 80 games.
Okay.
And mark my words, when the season's over, we'll be back here, and I'll hoist that trophy up.
But, I think that's, something we can definitely follow the rest of the season or as we get closer to the season. And we'll see what other moves are made. You and I talked before. I don't think any moves are going to really be made until Manny Machado and Bryce Harper are signed and see where they go. I think everything will kind of fall after that. But definitely in the future we'll be talking about that. And let's go ahead and move over into and kind of wrap up with Bearcats football. And then I think that leaves us some room in the future to talk more about Reds baseball and then UC basketball in the future. But let's wrap up with some UC football.
Absolutely.
So the Bearcats, man, 10 wins this season. That's
11 wins this season.
11 wins if you include the bowl. That's right.
11-2.
And I think that's only the third time in school history they've won 10 games or more.
It's also like the first time since Butch Jones left. So.
Ooh, and we had some pretty tough years with Tommy Tuberville.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. Like I said earlier, I think once Tommy came here, he had given up already. I don't know.
I just don't know how you did you see the offensive linemen we had for those they looked like they're playing, in the Mac-12 or the GMC, man. Yeah. Looked like some Oak Hills High School offensive linemen,
Wow. Okay. But yeah, definitely a good turnaround. I think Fickle's really good for this program.
Oh, absolutely.
There was some rumors about him going to West Virginia, getting some other looks. He said he will be back, which I think is great for the program. I think he has that Buckeye mentality, winning culture. He gets that from Urban Meyer and things like that. And I think he's got a lot of experience, and I think the players like him, which is really important.
I think it's undeniable that he is in 2 years' time has changed the culture of that program and has brought it back to a winning program. And I listen a lot to Mo Egger on ESPN 1530, and he talks about Brian Kelly and Luke Fickell. When they came into the program, you just knew they had it, whatever it was, and they've got it. And I'm glad we saved this segment for the end, because I've got 2 hot takes for you.
Okay.
And so we'll stay with Fickell first, and I'll let you kind of elaborate more on what your thoughts are. But my first hot take is I think Luke Fickell will prove to be the best coach in University of Cincinnati history.
You think he will be or has?
Will be, not has. Will be. He's only been here 2 seasons, but I think he will be.
Well, I would agree with that. He doesn't even have all his players yet. He's still playing with some of Tubbs' guys. He just won a bowl game with Hayden Moore,
right?
Who last year got benched. Who hadn't played well at all.
Right.
So I think that's already an improvement, whether that's scheme or confidence or whatever it is. It couldn't have been written better, because Hayden Moore got to ride off in the sunset as a bowl game winner.
Yeah, and at the regrettable demise of Ritter and his, I don't even know what the final say was on his leg, but he ended up getting injured in that bowl game.
Well, he had an ankle injury, and he just ended up sitting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but and I think that speaks a lot to it too. You have 2 guys in Warren and Ritter who were impact players right off the bat, and that's just on the offensive side of the ball. So not even to mention, our defense was one of the best in the nation this year in all of Division I college football. And it's, you couldn't have said the same a couple of years ago. And to have that drastic of a change, I think it's not like we're getting 5-star recruits out here. We don't have Alabama where we're pushing out 11 draft picks every year.
Right.
To have guys who are able to come in and make impacts as freshmen, sophomores, and then take guys and elevate them from where they were before, and previous years under former leadership, is really speaks a huge testament to how much the Fickell has done to change the program, both in mentality and scheme. And UC fans have a reason to be excited about UC football again, and it's nice. It's a great change of pace.
It is nice. And you talked about the defense. When you think back, at the defense, there's a couple really close games sealed by picks.
Right.
I think there was one game that was sealed by a pick 6. So there's definitely some big plays there. And I can't express this enough. Cincinnati is a football town.
Oh, absolutely.
It's always been a football town, and the high schools around here, produce some really good talent.
Oh,
and I think one thing that Fickell's done better than I think Tuberville lacked this was attacking recruiting in your hometown.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I think you can go to these big schools around here, especially up north. They got some really good programs there as well. So I think that was, a really great thing. And he doesn't have all his guys. I'm so excited to see what he can do, once he gets all his guys in.
Right.
And he's not playing with, older recruits from Tuberville. I'm just excited for the future.
Well, and I think the last person who was able to recruit really well locally here was a guy by the name of Brian Kelly, and I think that we were okay with an undefeated season leading up to a Sugar Bowl, where then Carlos Dunlap ate Tony Pike alive. But we don't talk about that.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah, we won't talk about that.
That's the dark times.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's talk about another big game that's come up on next year's schedule, and this is actually my second and probably hotter take.
I know where this is going.
Week 2. UC goes up to Columbus, goes up north, and take on the Ohio State Buckeyes. And I'm going to go ahead and make the bold prediction that the UC Bearcats, mark my words here, go into the Horseshoe and dominate Ohio State. I think they win by 2 touchdowns. I think Ritter throws for 400 yards.
Wow.
I think Warren rushes for 200. I think that Ohio State finds no answer for your University of Cincinnati Bearcats.
Oh my gosh! You can say that, and that's a great thing to believe, but they're not even at home. They're not even at home.
Yep, going in. Urban's gone. It's a new regime, baby. Welcome in the real team in Ohio. Here we come.
I'm telling you right now, I'm really glad for the success of UC football. However, I find it very hard to believe that they match up talent for talent, and especially not for 2 scores and 3 or 4 Bills passing and 2 Bills rushing.
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah, unless you have 4 and 5-star recruits on your team. Also, Ohio State just got Justin Fields from Georgia, who was the #1 recruit out of high school last year.
And that's the only reason it's going to be a 2-touchdown game instead of a 3-touchdown game.
Okay. Well, obviously I'm not going to argue this. We will see once they take the field next year. And like he said, mark his words, because he will reap what he sows. So,
I think that puts us about minute 46 there, and I think that's probably a good place to stop. What do you think, Andrew?
I think so.
But I think that this is something that I had fun doing. This has been the first episode of Round the Natty, and hopefully we'll have another one to push out to you guys next week. Definitely appreciating kind of feedback you can give us, and anything else for the people listening at home.
Nope. I think this is going to be fun for us, especially with everything that's changing in our sports team, especially with the Bengals and the Reds, mixing it up a little bit, getting the new fresh blood in there as far as coaching staffs and players and things like that. So I think it's going to be a fun one. You're gonna hear from us quite a bit. So
absolutely. All right. Well, that's been the first episode of Around the Natty, and keep it real, Cincinnati.